Hello, everyone. I'm Lydia Hayes, and today I'm going to share the true story of my life, a tale filled with pain, betrayal, but also a radiant strength I never knew I had. Have you ever trusted someone so much that you handed them your entire world, only to watch it shatter right before your eyes? If you're curious to find out how I rose from the ashes to claim justice, stick with me until the very end. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. I'm 28 years old, living in Austin, Texas, a city bathed in warm sunlight, with tree-lined streets and music echoing from bars every night. The light here always feels so vibrant, like it's wrapping you in a big, cozy hug, and I love how it brings everything to life. I run a small event planning company called Sunlit Moments. Nothing fancy, but it's my whole heart. Every day, I wake up at dawn, brew a steaming cup of tea, and smile as I feel the little kicks from the baby inside me. 6 months pregnant, my round belly is my greatest joy, a constant reminder that I'm about to become a mom. On the surface, my life looks like a perfect picture. I have Mason Reed, my husband, 32, the kind of man who turns heads whenever he walks into a room. He's tall, with dark, tousled hair that's pure charm and a confident smile that melts away any doubts. We met 2 years ago at a charity auction downtown. I was busy setting up the tables when he strolled over, wine glass in hand, and asked, "Do you think a guy like me is worthy of asking you for a dance?" I burst out laughing, blushing hard, and before I knew it, I'd fallen into his arms. Literally and figuratively. Mason's the type who makes you believe dreams have no limits. He'd talk about grand plans. "Lydia, I'll build an empire, and you'll be its queen." Those words rang like music, sweet and full of promise. We got married a year later in a simple ceremony by the Colorado River at sunset, the breeze teasing my hair as his eyes locked onto mine like I was his entire world. I believed it. Why wouldn't I? He made me feel loved, seen, like every day with him was a precious gift. My work at Sunlit Moments isn't easy, but I adore every second of it. I dash around in worn-out flats, checking every detail, from the way flowers sit on the tables to the twinkling lights at galas. My clients, from newlyweds to startup founders, always leave with beaming smiles, and that warms my heart. "Lydia, you're amazing," they say, and I just grin back. "I just want everything perfect for you." Even pregnant, I don't slow down. Maybe because I want to prove I can do it all. A wife, a mom, a strong woman. Mason's always by my side, or so I thought. He'd show up after work, his strong arms wrapping around me from behind, whispering, "You're the reason I push so hard every day, Lydia." Ha! I'd melt in those moments, feeling like our love was unshakable. We dreamed together of a future, a little house with a white picket fence, kids' laughter filling the yard, and evenings on the porch watching Texas sunsets blaze red. I painted that picture in my mind 100 times, every detail as bright as Austin's sunshine. But sometimes, in the midst of those happy days, I'd catch a strange flicker in Mason's eyes, a glance that darted away, a smile that didn't quite reach them. I told myself it was nothing, that pregnancy was making me overly sensitive. I was wrong. My perfect life, fragile as glass, was waiting to shatter, and that moment came faster than I ever imagined. In the days that followed, a cold breeze started creeping into my warm world, even though Austin's skies stayed as bright as ever. Mason, the man who'd once been my light, grew distant, like a shadow drifting through familiar corners of our home. He still smiled at me, still held me every night, but those hugs felt cold now, like he was hiding a massive secret behind those deep eyes. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that my 6-month pregnancy was messing with my head. But deep in my heart, a flame of doubt had quietly sparked, and I couldn't put it out. It started with little things, tiny cracks in the happy picture I didn't want to see. Mason began leaving the house at odd hours. Not early mornings like a normal workday, but in the dead of night, when pale moonlight washed over our roof. "Work's calling, sweetie," he'd say, his voice soft but rushed, grabbing his jacket and disappearing out the door. I'd lie in bed, hands on my belly, listening to his car fade away, my heart pounding like it wanted to ask, what kind of work can't wait until morning? He never gave details about the big project he kept mentioning, just flowery words about a life-changing opportunity and a bright future for us. I used to swoon over those promises, but now they sounded hollow, like wind whistling through an empty house. Then came the phone calls. His phone buzzed constantly, not when we were eating dinner or watching TV together, but when I drifted off to sleep, my round belly leaving me more exhausted than ever. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, seeing the phone's glow light up his face in the dark. He'd whisper into it, voice so low I could only catch fragments. Yeah, don't worry. It'll be done soon. When I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and asked, "Who's that?" He'd flinch, hang up fast, and force a smile. "Just a business partner, don't worry about it. Go back to sleep, you need rest for the baby." But that smile wasn't real. It twisted, like a mask about to slip. I tried to push the dark thoughts away. Mason was my husband, the man I'd vowed to stand by forever under a Texas sunset. He wouldn't hide anything from me, right? I comforted myself with busy mornings at sunlit moments, throwing myself into work to drown out the gnawing unease. But even there, amid clients' laughter and the scent of fresh flowers, I couldn't stop thinking about him. What was he doing when I wasn't around? Where was he when I needed him most? The moment that truly set my doubts ablaze came on a sweltering afternoon. I was at the kitchen table, flipping through a stack of bills, trying to sort out finances for the company and our family. Mason always left the money stuff to me. He said he wasn't good with numbers, and I'd taken pride in handling it. But that day, I spotted something odd in our joint account. $50,000 withdrawn 2 weeks ago, sent to a name I'd never heard of, Hayes Ventures. My heart skipped a beat. Hayes Ventures? My last name is Hayes, but I'd never started anything beyond sunlit moments. I called the bank, voice shaking. "Hi, I need to check a transaction. Who authorized it?" The clerk's reply was cold and certain. "Your husband, Mr. Mason Reed, approved the transfer, Mrs. Hayes." My blood turned to ice. $50,000, almost everything we'd saved for our future, for my baby, was gone. And Mason hadn't said a word. I rushed to his office, hands trembling as I opened the laptop he'd left on the desk. The password was still our wedding date, a small detail that stung my heart. I dug through his emails, hunting for any trace of Hayes Ventures. Nothing, just spam and vague work messages. But then I saw a stack of crumpled papers tucked under the keyboard, like he'd hidden them in a hurry. I pulled them out, my eyes locking onto the first line. Hayes Ventures LLC, business registration. My heart pounded like it might burst from my chest. This company bore my name, but I knew nothing about it. I flipped through the pages, each word slicing into me like a knife. Mason had signed my name, a forged signature, eerily perfect, on business licenses, investment contracts, and documents I couldn't fully grasp. I clutched my belly, feeling my baby stir, as if trying to comfort me amid the storm raging inside. What had he done? Why had he used my name? And that money, where had it gone? I sat there, surrounded by the chaos of papers, breathing hard, sweat rolling down my forehead. Doubt wasn't just a spark anymore. It had exploded into a wildfire, burning away every shred of trust I'd had in Mason. I knew I couldn't stop. I had to uncover the truth, no matter how much it hurt. And as I stood up, still holding my belly tight, I felt a new strength rising. A mother's strength, a wife's strength, ready to face the darkness to protect what I loved. My heart pounded like it might burst out of my chest. This company had my name on it, but I knew nothing about it. I flipped through the pages, each word cutting into me like a sharp blade. Mason had signed my name, a forged signature so perfect it scared me, on business licenses, investment contracts, and a pile of papers I couldn't even fully understand. I clutched my belly, feeling my baby move faintly, as if trying to comfort me through the storm swirling inside. What had he done? Why had he used me? And that money, where had it gone? I sat there, surrounded by a mess of papers, breathing hard, sweat dripping down my forehead. Doubt wasn't just a flicker anymore. It had roared into a wildfire, torching every ounce of trust I'd ever had in Mason. I knew I couldn't stop. I had to dig out the truth, no matter how much it tore me apart. And when I stood up, still gripping my belly tight, I felt something new ignite inside me. A strength, fierce and unyielding, the kind only a mother and a wife could summon to face the dark and protect what she loves. I stood there, in the cramped little office Mason called his own, my trembling hands clutching the wrinkled stack of Hayes Ventures papers. Austin's bright sunshine poured through the window, but it couldn't warm the icy chill spreading through my chest. Every page was like a razor-sharp knife, slicing deep into the trust I'd built over 2 years. I couldn't breathe, as if someone had sucked all the air out of my lungs. This wasn't some dumb mistake or simple misunderstanding. This was betrayal, raw and ruthless, spelled out in my own name. I collapsed into the chair, hands pressed to my belly, desperate to feel my baby, the only anchor keeping me from falling apart completely. I pored over every document, piecing together the fragments of this nightmare. Hayes Ventures LLC, a ghost company registered under my name, with my signature faked on every single sheet. There were investment contracts worth tens of thousands of dollars, lists of investors I'd never met, and promises of huge profits I'd never made. But what stopped my heart cold was a hastily printed email tucked in the pile, an email from Mason to some stranger named Claire Vaughn. The subject line was simple: "Everything's set." I opened it, my eyes blurring with the tears welling up. "Claire, my love," he wrote, "I've handled Lydia's part. She doesn't suspect a thing. Hayes Ventures is our golden ticket. Invest with confidence, and we'll have it all." I read it over and over, each word stabbing me like a needle. My love? We'll have it all? Mason, the man I called my husband, the one I trusted more than myself, was calling another woman the name he used to whisper to me. I threw the paper to the floor, hands covering my face, trying to choke back the sobs rising in my throat. But I couldn't stop. I needed to know more, even if the truth burned me to ashes. I lunged for his laptop, hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. I opened his email again, scrolling through months of messages to Claire Vaughn. They weren't just business. They were love letters, dripping with passion, plans for a future I had no place in. "I can't wait until we leave this behind, just you and me," he wrote in one. "Lydia's the past. She'll never figure it out." Another: "Don't worry about the money, Claire. The $50,000 from our joint account is enough to get us started. She's too caught up with the pregnancy to notice." I screamed silently, the cry trapped in my throat, hot tears splashing onto the keyboard. Who was Claire Vaughn? I opened a new tab, my trembling fingers typing her name into the search bar. Results popped up instantly. A wealthy investor in Austin, 29, a big name in the tech startup scene. There was a photo, her golden blonde hair shining, a dazzling smile, standing next to Mason at an event a few months back. I remembered that night. He'd said he was meeting a partner, told me to stay home and rest because the pregnancy was wearing me out. I'd believed him, sipping cold tea alone, while he held her hand and laughed for the cameras. I crumpled to the floor, hugging my belly tighter, as if my baby could feel the agony tearing me apart. Mason hadn't just scammed me. He'd turned me into a pawn in his dirty game. $50,000, money I'd scraped together penny by penny from sunlit moments, from sleepless nights working, from skipping shopping trips to save for our child, was now in his hands and hers. But worse than that, he'd betrayed me, betrayed our family, all for another woman. I thought of every kiss, every "I love you," and now they were lies. Sweet words rotting behind his perfect mask. I wanted to scream, to smash everything, to march up to him and demand answers right then and there. But I couldn't. My legs felt nailed to the floor, my body weighed down by the pregnancy and the pain. I stared at the papers scattered across the desk, proof of his betrayal, and a new fire sparked inside me, not doubt this time, but rage. I couldn't let him keep going, not to me, not to my baby. I needed the whole truth, and I needed a plan. I dug deeper, searching for any clue left behind. In a hidden file on his laptop, I found a list of Hayes Ventures investors, over 20 people, including Claire, with totals reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then I saw a calendar entry: charity auction, Hayes Ventures reveal, March 20th. That was tomorrow. Mason was going to flaunt this fake company's success to hundreds of Austin's elite, using my name to lure more victims. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, blood pounding hot in my veins. He thought I was a docile lamb, but he was dead wrong. I gathered everything: papers, emails, lists, stuffing them into an old briefcase, my hands still shaking, but now with resolve. I didn't know exactly what I'd do next, but one thing was certain: Mason wouldn't get away with this. I stood up, wiping my tears with the back of my hand, staring out the window where the sunshine mocked me with its brilliance. My heart was in pieces, but from that wreckage, a new strength was rising. The strength of a woman betrayed, a mother ready to fight. I rubbed my belly, whispering to my baby, "Mommy's going to protect you. We'll get through this." And I stepped out of the room, carrying a blazing fury to face tomorrow. The next day hit me like a whirlwind, dragging me into a storm I couldn't escape. I stood in front of the mirror, my hand brushing lightly over my 6-month pregnant belly, feeling my baby kick as if urging me to find my strength. My eyes were red and puffy from a sleepless night, but a fire burned in them, fierce and unstoppable, a blaze of rage and resolve. I slipped into a simple black dress, tight against my body, not to look pretty, but to remind myself I was carrying a child, a truth Mason had trampled without mercy. I shoved the briefcase stuffed with evidence into my bag, took a deep breath, and stepped out the door. Today, at Austin's biggest charity auction of the year, I'd make him pay. The venue, the Grand Oasis Hotel, shone like a palace in the heart of the city. Crystal chandeliers sparkled from the ceiling, and the sound of fancy laughter echoed from a crowd decked out in tuxedos and evening gowns. I walked through the massive doors, my pregnant belly drawing a few curious stares, but I didn't care. All I saw was Mason, up on a small stage in the middle of the ballroom, microphone in hand, his confident smile beaming like a star. He wore a sharp navy suit, hair slicked back perfectly, looking every bit the man people wanted to trust. Beside him stood Claire Vaughn, her golden blonde hair gleaming, a striking red dress hugging her frame, her hand resting lightly on his arm like they were some power couple. My heart twisted, but I forced myself forward, each step slow but steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's charity auction," Mason's voice rang out, smooth and magnetic. "I'm Mason Reed, and it's my honor to introduce Hayes Ventures, a company that's changing Austin's future. We've raised hundreds of thousands from smart investors, and today I invite you to join us." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound cutting into me like a knife. Hayes Ventures, my name, his dream, and the cruel lie he'd used to fool them all. I stood at the edge of the sea of people, gripping my briefcase, my breath coming fast like it might burst out of me. He went on, his voice brimming with pride. "With amazing partners like Claire Vaughn here, Hayes Ventures will take Austin to new heights. Invest in us. Invest in the future." Claire flashed a dazzling smile, dipping her head gracefully, and the crowd clapped again. I couldn't take it anymore. The fire inside me roared, scorching away every last shred of hesitation. I charged forward, shoving through the crowd, my shoes clacking on the marble floor like war drums. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice trembling but razor sharp, slicing through his speech like a blade. The room fell dead silent. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me. A pregnant woman, face flushed red, standing in the middle of the hall with a blazing glare. Mason spun around, his smile freezing, then melting away like ice under flames. "Lydia!" he choked out, his voice cracking, his hand tightening on the mic. Claire frowned, stepping closer to him, whispering something, but I didn't give him a chance to dodge. I thrust the briefcase high, my voice booming louder than I ever thought possible. "Hayes Ventures is a scam, and Mason Reed is the mastermind behind it all." The crowd buzzed, whispers rippling like waves. Mason leapt off the stage, hands raised as if to stop me. "Lydia, calm down. You don't know what you're talking about, he yelled, his voice dripping with panic. But I wouldn't stop. I ripped open the briefcase, yanked out the business registration, and flung it at his feet. This is Hayes Ventures, a fake company you set up in my name. My signature's forged, and you've conned over 20 investors, including Claire Vaughn right here. I spun toward Claire, her eyes darkening, her trembling hand slipping off Mason's arm. That's a lie, Mason roared, his face turning scarlet, sweat streaking down his forehead. She's making it up. She's jealous, that's all. But I was ready. I pulled out the stack of printed emails, holding them up for everyone to see. Here's the proof. Emails you sent to Claire, calling her my love, saying you'd handled me, that I was too busy with my pregnancy to notice you stole $50,000 from our joint account. I hurled them down, papers scattering like the broken pieces of my life. The crowd gasped, some stepping back, stunned. Claire moved forward, her shaky hands snatching an email off the floor. Her eyes widened as she scanned it, then whipped around to Mason with a look that could kill. What did you tell me? That this was legit? That I was the only one? She screamed, her voice breaking with fury. Mason staggered back, hands flailing in desperation. Claire, listen, she's twisting everything. I never… But I cut him off, my voice sharp as a knife. Never what? Never lied to me? Never slept with her while I was home, carrying your child? I pointed at my belly, tears spilling down my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. I wanted him to see, wanted them all to see. The room exploded, shouts, curses ringing through the hall. Scammer! Someone yelled. Call the cops! Another bellowed. Mason spun around, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. Lydia, stop this! We can sort it out privately, he begged. But I shook my head, stepping closer. No, Mason, you used my name, my money, and my love to build this pile of lies. Face it now. Before he could answer, the ballroom doors slammed open. 2 police officers stormed in, guns at their sides, voices thundering, Mason Reed, you're under arrest for fraud and forgery. The crowd parted, revealing Mason standing there, pale as a ghost, hands trembling. He bolted, lunging for a side exit, but one officer was faster, grabbing him and slamming him to the floor. The handcuffs clicked shut with a cold final snap. No, you don't get it. I'm innocent, he shouted, voice hoarse, but no one listened. Claire stood frozen, hands covering her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. She glanced at me, her eyes a mix of anger and pain, but said nothing. I didn't need her apology. I just needed Mason to pay. As the cops dragged him out, he twisted back to look at me, eyes bloodshot. Lydia, why'd you do this to me? I stood tall, hand on my belly, my voice icy. No, Mason. You did this to yourself. The hall still buzzed with shouts and whispers, but a strange calm washed over me. I'd laid the truth bare, brutal, naked, undeniable. My heart was still in shards, but I knew I'd won. Not just for me, but for my baby, and for the strength I'd found in the ruins. The weeks after the charity auction slipped by like a hazy dream, filled with sleepless nights and heavy days. I sat in my little Austin home, my belly now rounder at 7 months, clutching it tight like it was the last thread of hope I had left. Images of Mason being hauled off by the cops, the crowd's jeers, his wild, panicked eyes. They spun through my mind like a movie on repeat. But I didn't have time to drown in the hurt. The trial was coming, and I knew it was my last shot to make him pay for what he'd done to me, to my baby, and to the dozens of others he'd swindled. On the day of the trial, I walked into the Travis County Courthouse, my heart hammering like it might break free from my chest. The wood-paneled room smelled of old paper and tension, every seat packed with reporters, Mason's victims, and a few familiar faces from the auction. I wore a light green coat over my maternity dress, my pregnant belly impossible to miss, moving slow but steady. Eyes drilled into me from all sides, but I didn't flinch. I'd lost too much: trust, money, dreams, and today I was taking justice back. Mason sat at the defendant's table, still trying to pull off that perfect look in a crisp gray suit. But his eyes, bloodshot, sunken, couldn't hide how worn down he was. He glanced at me as I walked in, a flicker of pleading mixed with hate in his stare, but I gave him nothing back. I settled into the witness stand, gripping the armrests, my breath shaky. The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with a deep, steady voice, stepped forward. "Mrs. Lydia Hayes, please tell us your relationship with the defendant, Mason Reed," he said, calm but cutting. "He's my husband," I answered, my voice rough but firm. "We married 2 years ago, and I trusted him completely, until I found out he used my name to scam people." The room hummed with whispers, pens scratching furiously as reporters took notes. The prosecutor nodded, handing me the stack of papers I'd brought to the auction. "Please tell us what happened," he said. I took a deep breath, my voice quivering at first, but growing stronger with every word. "Mason set up a fake company called Hayes Ventures in my name. He forged my signature, took $50,000 from our joint account, money I saved for my baby, to lure investors. He tricked over 20 people, promising big returns, all while secretly cheating with Claire Vaughn and using me like a puppet." I paused, tears spilling as I mentioned my child, but I wiped them away fast. "I found out through his emails to her. He called me the past, said I was too busy being pregnant to notice. He betrayed me, betrayed our family." The courtroom went quiet, just my ragged breathing and the crowd's hushed murmurs filling the air. The prosecutor nodded, showing the documents to the jury. "No more questions, Mrs. Hayes," he said, his tone full of respect. But then Mason's lawyer stood up, a tall, wiry guy with a smug smirk. "Mrs. Hayes," he started, voice dripping with sarcasm, "you say Mr. Reed took money from your joint account. But it's joint, right? You didn't object when he withdrew it, did you?" I clenched my fists, nails biting into my skin. "I didn't know what he was using it for," I shot back, voice hard. "He said it was for our big project, for my baby's future. I trusted him." The lawyer sneered, stepping closer. "So you let him handle the money, no contract, no clear agreement. Isn't it just regret now that things didn't go your way and you're pinning it on him?" "No," I shouted, my voice cracking like thunder, startling the room. "I don't regret. I was lied to. He used my name, faked my signature, and slept with someone else while I carried his child. That's not regret. That's the truth." The lawyer recoiled, his smirk vanishing, but he pressed on. "Do you have solid proof he meant to deceive you?" I pointed at the papers. "His emails to Claire Vaughn. He admits it all. Read them." The prosecutor jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor. The question's been answered." The judge, a stern woman with a no-nonsense face, nodded. "Sustained. Move on." I sat back, heart pounding like I'd just run a battlefield, but I wasn't done. Other witnesses took the stand. A guy who'd lost $30,000, a bank worker confirming the forged signature, even Claire Vaughn, who now glared at Mason with pure hate. "He told me it was legit," she said, voice trembling. "I didn't know he was married." When it was Mason's turn to defend himself, he stood, voice shaky but clinging to confidence. "I didn't scam anyone," he said, eyes darting around the room. "Hayes Ventures was real. I just wanted a future for my family. Lydia's got it all wrong. I love her." He turned to me, pleading in his stare. "Lydia, tell them. We can get past this." I looked at him, my heart aching but ice cold. "You don't love me," I said, low and sharp. "You love money and Claire. You destroyed our family." He opened his mouth to argue, but the judge raised a hand. "Enough," she said, her voice booming. After the jury deliberated, the judge returned, her steely gaze fixed on Mason. "Mason Reed," she declared, "you exploited your wife's trust and dozens of others for greed. This court sentences you to 8 years in prison for fraud and forgery, and you'll repay every cent to your victims, including $50,000 to Mrs. Lydia Hayes." The room buzzed, scattered applause breaking out. Mason screamed, "No! This is a mistake!" But the cops cuffed him, dragging him away. He twisted back, eyes red, staring at me, but I didn't waver. As the courtroom doors slammed shut, I stood, hand on my belly, feeling a massive weight lift off my shoulders. I'd fought and I'd won, not out of hate, but for my baby, for myself. I stepped outside the courthouse, Austin's sunshine wrapping around me, and for the first time in months, I smiled. A small smile, but brimming with strength. The months after the trial drifted by like a gentle breeze, carrying a peace I never thought I'd find again. I sat in my small Austin home, spring sunshine spilling through the curtains, painting warm streaks across the wooden floor. In my arms was Ella, my tiny daughter, born just weeks after Mason was locked away. Her soft black hair curled lightly, her clear eyes gazing up at me, and every time she smiled, my heart melted. Ella was my light, the reason I clawed my way out of the darkness, and now we were building a new life together. Not perfect, but mine. This house isn't big, no white picket fence or sprawling yard like the dreams I once shared with Mason, but it's warm, filled with things I picked out myself. An old armchair I snagged from a second-hand market, watercolor paintings I made during sleepless nights, and a little wooden crib by the window where Ella naps to the sound of birds chirping outside. Sunlit Moments is still my pride and joy. I went back to work after giving birth, slow but steady, planning small events with a bright smile for my clients. "How do you manage this right after having a baby, Lydia?" they'd ask, amazed. I'd just laugh and say, "I'm stronger than I ever knew." Looking back, I can't believe I made it through those pitch-black days. There were nights I cried until I had nothing left, clutching my pregnant belly, wondering if I could be a mom on my own. Mornings when I woke up terrified that Mason had stolen everything, not just money, but my faith in the world. But every kick from Ella inside me, every time I dragged myself off the cold floor after a nightmare, I found a new piece of strength. I'm not that naive Lydia anymore, blindly trusting his lies. I'm Lydia Hayes, a mother, a woman, a fighter who battled and won. Meanwhile, far from Austin, Mason lives a different life. I heard he's in state prison, dressed in a frayed orange jumpsuit, no more sleek suits or cocky grins. Someone who saw him said he sits alone in his cell, eyes hollow, hands cradling his head like he's trying to forget what he's lost. "He mentioned you," they told me over the phone. "He said he's sorry." I didn't reply, just hung up quietly. Sorry? It's too late for that, and there's no room left for him in my heart. I don't hate Mason, not anymore. The anger that once scorched me has cooled, replaced by a calm I've built for myself. He shattered our old dreams, but in a twisted way, he gave me a gift: the power to stand up, to believe in myself. I don't need him to make this life whole. I've got Ella, sunlit moments, and Austin's blazing sunny days to remind me life's still worth living. Today, I sit here, cradling Ella in my lap, watching her drift off with her little lips parted. I brush her cheek gently, whispering, "Mommy promises you a good life. No one will hurt us again." That promise isn't just for Ella, it's for me. A vow that I'll never let anyone stomp on my heart again. I stand up, lay her in her crib, and step out onto the porch. A spring breeze sweeps through, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass, and I close my eyes, letting the sunshine wrap me in a soft, cosmic hug. Life isn't always fair, but it always gives you a chance to start over. I lost so much, but I found a tougher version of myself in the wreckage. And as I look out at Austin's horizon, glowing red like the fire that once burned in me, I know I'm ready to live, to love, to be everything Ella needs. Thank you all for sticking with my story from start to finish. I hope it touched your hearts, even just a little. If it stirred anything in you, anger, sadness, pride, drop a comment below, please. I'd love to hear what you think, because stories like this are what helped me find my light again. Thanks, and see you on another sunny day.